In the afternoon of June 15th, the most horrific crime took place for three boys. Hunter, Clayton, and Chase were 3, 4, and 7 years old, and they woke up in the morning thinking they were just going to have another regular day. When their dad, Chad Doerman, comes home, he requests that his wife Laura and the three boys come and lay in bed with him. Now, for the boys, they're thinking this is just going to be a regular nap. They get to spend time with their parents. Little did they know, Chad Doerman at that point got up from the bed, went to his gun safe, opened it up, grabbed a .22, and started to open fire on his own sons. Now, he fired 2 shots at his first son. His daughter ran down the hallway because she was watching TV in the living room, and she was trying to figure out what was going on. Laura got up and was trying to do life-saving routines on one of her boys when the daughter tried to rush the other 2 boys out of the house. Now, Chad ends up firing 2 more shots and killing boy number 1. Comes outside, he chases another boy down, takes him 4 more shots. As Laura comes out, she's able to scoop up the last boy, and Chad tries to reason with Laura to let the little guy go so that way he can finish off what he started. She fights and tries to hold on to the little boy, ends up getting bit by Chad where she gets into a tussle. The little boy falls down and he gets shot once in the head. Chad in total fired 9 shots. Clayton and Hunter were both shot 4 times. And Chase was shot once in the head. Now, after this all went down, Laura tried to do everything she could to resuscitate her 3 boys. All Chad could do was walk over to the stoop and wait for the cops to arrive to kind of tell his story. Now, we're going to watch the body cam footage, and then we're going to talk about Chad Doerman and what we think is going to happen in the trial that's upcoming. Before we jump into that, though, welcome back to my channel, True Crime Fans. I'm your host, Tim Sahlberg. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. I do appreciate all the support. We've been getting a lot of views on our videos, a lot of comments, and a lot of different perspectives from you folks, the viewers, and I love that. I love looking at these cases from multiple different facets. We don't always agree, but everybody's been very respectful, and I appreciate that. If you do like the video, hit that like so we can get it out to more people as well. And then, like I've already stated, hit that comment. So, that being said, let's watch the police body cam footage, and then we're going to break this down together.
Show us your fucking hands now!
Stand up!
Stand up! Stand up!
Stand up now! Stand up!
Stand the fuck up!
Get your hands up here. Tell them we're 21. It's in the air.
Those guys can confirm that there's people that need first aid, and that's the shooter who's not complying. They need to take care of the
I got it.
victims. They have to shoot him and shoot him.
Man, I ain't trying to hurt nobody or nothing. I'm completely sober. Never did drugs a day
63,
in my
we're
life.
21. Get the EMS over here.
Well, I did drugs when I was little, but I don't do drugs now. I'm sober. I'm not trying to fight you. Gatlin,
63.
get your butt inside. Gatlin, get your butt inside.
We on primary?
Now.
29, we got 3 kids down.
3 kids down, 16 down.
Gatlin.
63, we're 21.
Knock
Have
it off.
EMS respond over here.
You're clear, they're being advised. Robert 34, just started mass casualty response. 63, do you want them to respond to the Laurel Lindale address? Where exactly do you need them?
We're right in the front yard. What are you doing, man?
Hey, are you copying all this?
Can I roll over? I ain't gonna hurt you. I ain't gonna hurt
You
nobody.
got anything on you?
No, I ain't got nothing, man. Phone, that's it. I ain't mad. I ain't nothing. Just make sure that dog don't come out. I don't think he'll bite you. Just don't reach for him and try to grab him and pet him.
All right.
He won't bite you.
What's going on, man?
Nothing. Can I stand up? It's kind of uncomfortable.
I'm gonna
I
get
ain't
you
gonna
here
do
in a
nothing. I ain't running
second.
away. You can do whatever you want with me.
Here. You the only one else inside the house?
What?
You the only one else inside the house?
Yeah.
Sit down right here.
My daughter, she ran over to the fire department.
Sit down.
It's my stepdaughter.
Put him in the cage.
This is Will.
State of Arkansas, Chad Doerman, 2023 CRA 1975. This matter is before the court today for purposes of bond hearing. Mr. Callum, you were here on behalf of Mr. Doerman, Mr. DeCalvi, Mr. Gadd.
That a bond of $75,000 with order conditions would be imposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeCalvi.
Judge, we, at this point, I'm going to let Mr. Gast handle the bond for on our behalf. Thank you.
Good morning, Judge.
Good morning.
Judge, we've got law enforcement with us here today. Our office has been involved. Lots of people in our office have been involved with law enforcement throughout yesterday, afternoon, and evening, all the way through this morning. And the facts I have for you at this point are as follows. The trauma that this man has inflicted on his family, the community, law enforcement, first responders, and all of the rest of us who have any idea what's going on here is unspeakable. There's been a full admission in this case, Judge. The case is still new. We're still discovering facts. Incomprehensible cruelty. The father that stands before you lined up his 3 young boys, and he executed them in his own home with a rifle. They were ages 3, 4, and 7, Judge. In an act of desperation to save her children, the mother at some point grabbed the gun that father was able to flee into a field near home. And again, we know from his admission, father hunted that boy down, drug him back to the property, and executed him in front of witnesses. The mother was shot through the hand in her attempt to protect her children. To just begin to imagine their fear. This was the man that every day they woke up looking to for protection, love, guidance in all things. The man they trust more than any other person on earth. The person they rely upon to keep them safe from harm. He was their world. He was their guardian. And he executed them in cold blood. We know that from his admission. One of the most monstrous, craven, cowardly acts it will ever be our misfortune to see. To make things even more disturbing, Judge, this was no haphazard act. Again, by his own admission, he planned the act on a whim. He's confessed to what I believe is the worst crime, at least I hope, that I'll see in my lifetime. I hope it's the worst fact pattern that ever comes before this court. Judge, it's important for the court to know, and Monroe Township Fire and EMS and other first responders.
All right, so the first thing that we got to look at, even prior to looking at the body cam footage, is, man, this was cold. If you're Chase, if you're Clayton, if you're Hunter, your hero is probably your mom and your dad. I know it was for me when I was growing up, and I'm sure it was for these kids. They had the opportunity to go take a nap with their dad, Chad Doerman, and they end up waking up to essentially death, and that death coming from people that they trust. Now, the worst crime in the world is any crime against kids, okay? The only thing that could get any worse than that is if they're your own kids and those kids trusted you to be their guardians. Like we've stated in previous videos, our jobs as humans are to raise our own kids, to make sure that we protect them and to walk side by side with them in this world. And for Clayton, Chase, and Hunter, that's what they thought they were getting the day that they ended up dead on June 15th. Chad comes home early from work, and he had already premeditated this murder, as you can hear when he is talking to the police. He basically states that he had been thinking about killing his kids for 3 or 4 months. Not only that, Chad said that he didn't sleep for 3 to 4 days prior to this happening. So he had been thinking about this from day one, right? Now, he confesses to this, or at least it's alleged that he confesses to this. For whatever reason, Chad Doerman decides to plead not guilty. Now, why does he do this? We don't know. And I want to break this down a little bit, and I want to hear from you folks as to what he should have done or what we think is going to happen in trial. So number one, what I think he should have done, no matter what the case was, he took 3 little lives away that he was responsible for. That to me is not a contribution to society, and that to me is the utmost trust being broken. And no matter what the situation is, he should never see freedom again. Okay? Even if they find that he was psychotic or he was mentally ill, he should spend the rest of his life in some sort of facility. Okay? If that's the case, then that facility should be somewhere where there's doctors that can take care of him. Otherwise, he should be spending the rest of his time in jail. That's just such a heinous act and such a heinous crime. My other opinion is he did know what he was doing because he didn't shoot his daughter and he didn't shoot the mom, Laura, right, which are 2 females. So why did he single out the males? We don't quite know that yet. But again, there's 3 people that have lost their lives in this. Okay. Now, why would Chad Doerman decide to plead innocent? Well, obviously he's going to be represented, and based off of the facts in the case that we know so far, there's a lot of things that are just red flags. They're not normal things or normal things that normal people would do. And maybe his lawyers are looking at going at an insanity plea. Maybe because of some of the things that Chad Doerman said, like he didn't sleep 3 to 4 days prior to this incident happening, that could lead to an insanity plea. And for jurors, if they're actually listening to what insanity means, this might play into it, especially if he says that he was quote unquote tormented for the last few months about killing his sons. And he hasn't given a reason yet, and maybe that all plays a factor into an insanity plea, depending on what the psychologists are going to say when they go to his trial, because you know that the lawyers on both sides, both the prosecution and the defense, are going to have their expert witnesses sit down and talk with Chad Doerman. Now, you also hear from Chad Doerman's dad, which is not going to hold a lot of weight in court. I'm sure the defense are going to want to call him for some reason, and he's going to get up there, but basically he says that his son looked empty inside when he watches him go to court. Could this all play a factor? It could. Could that end up getting him insanity? It absolutely could, based off some of the things that Chad himself says. Now, there's still a lot of things that we need to learn, and is he going to come forth and kind of talk about what led to it? What was his motive? Why did he single out the 3 boys, and why did he leave the 2 girls alone? We do hear from a neighbor that basically said that Chad Doerman was constantly yelling at his wife, constantly yelling at his kids, and that his tone was always mean. Now, we don't hear anything about domestic violence, so hard to assume that he's ever hit his kids or hit his wife, but that could come out later on. Anybody that's capable of murdering their 3 kids would definitely be capable of domestic violence. And we do see portions of the domestic violence when he bites his wife, Laura, to get little Chase out of her arms before shooting him in the head. So these are all things that could play a factor in this court case. Now, as a juror, you have to listen to what the judge says when it goes to insanity. And we don't know if that's what the plea is going to ultimately end up being, right? Because right now he's pleading not guilty. So this is the time frame where they're doing the investigation work, and they're going to look at everything that happened. And did he have a psychotic break? And it's a very real possibility that he did. And there's a very real possibility that he is insane. Anybody that could look their 3 children in the eyes and actually shoot them, there's something wrong with them. There's no dispute in that. Anybody that can put 4 shots into multiple children and then 1 shot to the head to their youngest children or their youngest child, right? There's something wrong with them. So will he end up getting the insanity plea? He might. Or he might end up coming out and pleading guilty to everything based off of what the prosecution is going to do and what they offer him. Now, there is another factor to this. The mom, Laura. At first, I was thinking, why didn't she just pick up the kids and run? She tells them to run and she tells her daughter to run, but why didn't she run? And the more you go through this, right, the more you start thinking about, wow, what could this have looked like for Laura and what could this have looked like for the little boys? And I would never victim shame or victim blame, and that's not what I mean by that. It's just hard to wrap your mind around it if you've never been through it, and I've never been through it. But the first thing I thought about is if I heard a gunshot, I would want to run with my kids. Now, in that instant, there's a fight or flight moment that goes on with the mom, Laura, and she chose to stay and fight. And what I mean by that is she chose to try to give resuscitation to the first child that was shot. And then she was able to be strong enough to walk outside and continue that, even though the boys were getting shot at by Chad Doerman. Her life could have been taken at any moment, and she still was trying to save those boys. And that, to me, makes her a hero. And for that little girl, who's the daughter, to stick in there and try to get the boys out of there as well, she's a hero. And not only that, we do see in one of the news articles, she decides to play in a ball tournament later on to essentially remember her brothers, right? In honor of her brothers. So those two ladies there, in the grand scheme of things, are both heroes. They both made it out, which is great. But, you know, they didn't make it out unscathed. The mom was shot in the hand and was bitten and lost 3 sons. The daughter lost 3 brothers out of this, and she was the one that ultimately had to run to the fire department to get some help, right? And imagine having to say the words, "My dad is killing everybody." It would be absolute craziness. And now she's going to have to watch this trial unfold and see what happens to her dad. This is going to be a long time, and I don't know if these girls will ever be healed, but they are definitely heroes in my mind, and I could only imagine what they went through that day. The last 3 are the victims, Chase, Clayton, and Hunter. Again, I'm going to end it with how we started this. They woke up that morning, 3 brothers just hanging out, having fun. Their dad comes home early, decides to take a nap with them. They get in bed with mom and dad. From there, they're suddenly awakened from the gunshot that kills their first brother. What do? They get up and run. They try to go outside. Don't know what's going on because the evil monster that's lurking inside is actually their father, the person that's supposed to be protecting them. And he's the one that ends up coming outside and finishing the job with those 2 kids. For me, this case is going to be very interesting to watch. For me, this case brings a lot of anger just because there's kids involved in it as well. But I do want to hear from you folks. What do you think is going to happen to Chad? Do you think he's going to get that insanity plea? Do you think he sticks it out with the not guilty plea and the jury's going to be smart enough to come back and convict him for first-degree murder on those 3 counts? And I think in total there was 21 counts that were that he was charged with. Do you think that something more might happen or something less? There's a lot of things that are going to happen along these lines, and I want to hear from you. Leave your comments down below. That being said, I hope everybody has a good week this week. There's a lot of cases going on. I can't cover them all, and I am back to work this week, which means I'm not going to have as much time, but definitely throw some ideas out there. I do appreciate it. And if there's anything I can do to make these videos better, whether it's thumbnails, whether it's the quality, we have improved some of the things with the microphone and the foam on the wall. I want to continue to do so to continue to grow the channel. But let's work on getting to 1,000 subs. We're currently in the 190s, and I know we can break 200 in the next video. That being said, I'm your host, Tim Sahlberg. Have a wonderful week. Over and out.